Why does this always happen? I have to click start recording 3 times. It's like on the third time. The first 2 times it works. Oh my goodness, I need glasses or I can't do this. Because I have notes on my screen here. Alright. So the more I think about this, the more I'm just going to do I want to do pure, uncut Kim video diarying, making a video diary of just me, myself, talking about the things that I think and I feel, my philosophies, the way I understand reality, in the useful sense of these are lessons that have come about in my life, whether I'm learning them or whether they're built with somebody else or other people, and I want to share this wisdom with the world. I think, maybe it's not just me in my own life. There's other people out there who would love to digest this wisdom too. So that's the goal. And instead of overthinking how I'm going to produce these videos, I'm just going to give the world the uncut, authentic Kim. Okay, can I read this? No, I can't. I guess I'm like a glasses YouTuber now. So today's video comes about from some personal stuff that happened where somebody I know who's very dear to me has had people in her life. I don't even think she knows these people, or if she does know these people are anonymous, and it could even just be a person. And they're stirring up a lot of social media drama about this person that I care about. And so she's suffering because it hurts to feel that other people are judging you poorly, especially if it's poorly. I mean, it probably doesn't hurt so much if they're judging you well. But I needed to, be the supporting person, friend that I am in her life. And so that's the lesson that I want to talk about, is basically, how do you handle it when people talk shit about you? And what it means. So we'll start, I would like to start with what it means when people talk shit. So if there's somebody, well, you know what, don't even think about other people. Think about yourself. Now, as yourself, imagine what it is that you do for your relationships. Are you a giving, supporting person, or are you a taking person? And you might be thinking about that physically, but I'm really thinking about it on an emotional level. You can be an emotionally supportive and giving person, which means you care about how somebody is and you strive to uplift them and to support them when they need help and raise them up, right? This is the good, right? And if you're not like this, you might also, it's not even that sorry for the tangent here. Maybe I'll just make this point after. If you're not being the positive, uplifting person that you could be, we are all capable of it. I certainly believe and hope so. I like to think the best of us as a human race. The alternative is that you are taking from other people for yourself emotional well-being, and this might look like criticism or arrogance or victimhood. And what these things are tactical energy drawing tools, and they're I don't think they're good. People have these mechanisms, these tools, because they themselves aren't capable of bringing themselves up. This is getting very, very like esoteric and abstract quickly. So basically, like as a person, you go about your life and you strive to feel good because that is the better state of being than it is to feel poorly. And we all go through feeling good and feeling bad, and we probably all go through phases of like taking energy from other people and giving energy to other people. And so it's not so like black and white, oh, you're good or you're bad. It's more like in that circumstance, like there's a thing happening in a direction or not. Like sometimes, like it's not even bad to take energy from people if it's a thing that you need in your level. But like if you can't take that energy from other people to like come back to baseline and normal and be self-sufficient as like a good feeling person, and you are constantly needing to draw energy from other people to feel better about yourself, well then that's kind of something that you should work on, because you're a net negative in society. And if you are having these things, I mean, I don't mean that personally at all, I'm just saying objectively, if we depersonalized all of society, or every single human here, is like if human beings were all what's the word here, self-sufficient, capable of feeling good, and then there would be no need to pull from other people, right? And better yet would be is everybody is net positive in that they're always sharing and caring and being considerate and helping to like uplift others. But the fact is that like a lot of people, a lot of society, and we're born into it, you have to do a lot of self-work just to get out of this negativity necessity, is that if your parents are negative to you, then as a coping mechanism growing up, you adapt to that negativity. And I think there's like a long history of negativity, and it's not even like your parents' fault or anybody's fault. It's just like trauma creates it. So I mean, this is probably a topic for a whole other video, but basically like world events happen outside of our control, and that negativity affects us, and that effect on us means that like without help, because it's hard, it's really hard to do it by yourself. And not even me, like I strive to be a positive plus person, but I've definitely had help from all of the resources from which I've learned across, all the years of me trying to self-improve. Which is why I'm making these videos, is to help others if you're also on this road. But my point is that like as a person, there are times when you're like giving and there are times when you're negative. Now, when somebody's talking shit, and I don't know any like more eloquent way to think this. I mean, like it's like when you are putting somebody else down. If someone is putting someone else down, that's like a negativity tool. They're trying to draw energy from somebody else to feel better about themselves because they themselves feel poorly about themselves, and they need to make other people feel bad so that they can also they can have like the dopamine hit, or I don't know what else it would be, but they can have like a brief moment of feeling better. That's why people talk shit. It's they themselves have an internal struggle or flaw that prevents that. They need to satiate. It's like a hunger. They feel bad and they want to feel good. So because they haven't been given the tool to like self-help and find positivity themselves, they are taking it from others by putting them down. It's almost like arrogance. It's like I don't feel good about myself, so I'm gonna make you feel bad about yourself, so that we can both feel shitty. And then if you feel bad, then I can feel good that you were feeling bad. And like, it doesn't really make sense. It's like, an eye for an eye, and the whole world goes blind. But there must be a sense of superiority that comes about it. Hurting somebody else for your own gain is a terrible thing to be doing, but it happens. And it's a lot more common than it should be. I've definitely had people doing this to me. It's not a good thing to do, but it's almost like takes two to tango, because, well, okay, so as yourself, you act, and these actions create, their effect in the world. On the other hand, there are all the perceivers of these actions, and that goes through the whole filter of their own perception, followed by their own internal brain processing built upon their own experiences, before it comes back out as their actions too, right? So when somebody's talking shit, what they're actually doing is they're taking the external world and they're filtering it through their own negativity. And they've devised a way or a course of action that they've now acted upon to feel better about themselves, which is, putting somebody else down. So what do you do when this happens? Well, I believe, and I've seen from experience here, like, that's not unfounded belief, but it is belief, because I don't think this is the realm of knowledge anymore. This is really the realm of experience. It's like experiential, and it's not like a hard science, so I'm not going to say like this is absolute truth, and that's definitely another topic for another video. But if you stoop to the level of their negativity, you're now taking an eye for an eye. And I think it's actually worse, because someone who is putting someone else down, and in particular, on one hand it's like if you're putting someone down directly, like in a one-on-one conversation, is like, that's bad, right? But it's also bad when you are putting someone down outside of their outside of their means of interaction. So like, if you're putting someone down directly, it's condescending, and it's not good. But it's worse almost if you're doing it outside of conversation with them, because that means it's an interaction that will hurt them, and you don't want to have like the discussion about it. You really just want to have external validation, which is why you put them down. And I used to be about society when I was younger, and still philosophizing about this stuff in the dark times of my life. And it's not healthy, right? Like, it was because I was feeling poorly about my place in society that I needed to put society down so that it would be on my level. So if someone else is putting you down, the best thing to do is to stay out of that level, because then you're dropping into that negativity state, and that's what they want anyway, right? Or maybe they don't want it, but they do. They're stirring up negativity because they're feeding on it, and it gives them a thrill and a rush, and like, it gives them, their ego, like a validation, which is that they've created some evil in the world, some progress, or they've made some impact, and they feel good for having succeeded at negativity impact. And it's not good, because you're spreading negativity and you're just hurting people in the process. But like, it's hard when you are suffering, to understand, like, if you don't have the tools, it seems kind of like you take what you can get, right? So the best thing to do is to teach these people, but you can't always teach these people. Some lessons, people have to learn it themselves, and they have to hit rock bottom before they do that. Or people change for two reasons, right? And one is they want to change, and that's seldom the case, and it's generally because they need to change, which means that things go wrong for them to the point where they self-reflect and decide to change for themselves. My point being is that, like, stooping to their level means that, like, you have become more negative, and that means you're compounding the negativity, right? Like, if someone is being negative and they're putting you down, scapegoating you, the best thing to do is, like, literally is just to do nothing and to start empathizing them. Because while you are taking the words personally, you're becoming involved in feeding that negativity. You're letting the negativity consume you, and then it's gonna channel back out, right? And, like, this is part of the process. And the trick is not to, like, feed it. Because if you keep feeding it, it's just, like, negativity begetting more negativity. It's contagious, right? Like, so you want to cut. That's my cat, silly cat. You want to cut that cycle out because you don't want to procreate more negativity in the world. What you want to do is you want to bring in positivity. So you have to find the strength within yourself. You don't even need to find it within yourself. You have to find it within yourself. But you can also find it with the support of others, because that helps when you need support. And if you are experiencing a lot of negativity and it's more that you can handle yourself in the moment, this is why we have friends and family. This is why we have support groups and therapists, and heck, even, the law, right? In a defamation case, there's support for combating this negativity. So do nothing. Don't contribute to this cycle of negativity by feeding into it, by, like, taking it personally, by, like, razzing back at the instigator. Just, like, you need to wash it away so that you're not feeling that negativity. And the way you improve the situation is by bringing your positivity about. So you practice all the love and compassion and understanding that you have at your potential. And it's not easy, and I'm not saying it's easy. I'm saying that this is the road. And what happens is, if you can practice compassion and understanding about the instigator, and you say, well, the instigator is suffering and they are hurting, and I can understand hurt, right? And I can understand that they are hurt. And because they are hurting, they are now looking for ways to stem the bleeding, right? Or to, why are they bleeding all over the place? Or why are they hurting and sharing their negativity into the world and putting me down? Well, I can understand that instigator is suffering, and because I know how it hurts to suffer, then I can forgive them for suffering, because it's also not their fault that they're suffering. Or maybe it is their fault that they're suffering, but it's not easy, and that until you learn a better way to solve your own personal, emotional, interactions with society, that negativity is the only tool, or is the tool that is easiest and works best for them at the moment. It's not the right tool. It's a hurtful tool, and they shouldn't do it. You're right. Like, but you can understand that that's why they did it. And like, you can go all the way up, right? Like, when I was thinking about, my ex-wife, like, I was thinking about how all of all of the hurt, she was doing this to me, right? Like, she was hurting, and her hurt came from, her family, and it may or may not have come from her family. I'm imagining it because that allowed me to forgive her. So she was feeling pain, and she didn't know how to cope with the pain. So she shared that pain with me and put me down so that she could feel better about herself, because she never took it upon herself to learn the tools to feel better about herself without putting someone else down. It was the way she did it, and she got validated by it. And this is what happens is as long as other people, and there are other people out there who are very willing to jump on a bandwagon and support negativity, because there's enough negativity in the world where it resonates. And worse is, like, the story isn't even right anymore, because it takes there's three sides to every story, right? Like, what he said, what she said, and what actually happened. And people can be swayed by the inaccuracies of having just the one, rose tinted colored glasses. I butchered that. Version of a story, right? And then what they're sympathizing is not accurate, but it's enough for it to validate the instigator who's performing all the shit talking. So if you can understand that this is what they're doing, is that they haven't learned, they're like a child, right? They haven't learned how to self-soothe, right? So when they're hurt, they hurt others, right? The child cries because it's in pain. It doesn't understand that, like, the pain is temporary, or that, scrapes heal, or it's not your fault, right? They'll blame you, or they'll cry so that they can have help. They're like children, and we don't hate our children when they're hurting, right? We have to understand and empathize with them so that they can feel supported. And if you're really strong, you will have enough empathy to support the instigator. Like, say for example, the instigator is not doing it behind your back, but they're doing it to your face, and they're putting you down to your face. Then you might be lucky enough to have the opportunity to connect with them beyond their defense mechanism, and, like, they're going to be talking down to you, and you have to understand that the feeling is coming from their own perspective, right? Their own reality, their own mind, and their own experiences have created this negativity in their life. And if you can connect with them and support them and say, I think, it's some guy sends out emails about dealing with narcissistic exes, and he says what you say is, that's not true. That's like the first line of defense. But ideally, it's not necessarily the case that you can connect with the person who's instigating it. In fact, it's probably more often the case that you can't. And that's why the first step should be to do nothing, because that's cutting it off. And, maybe that's the actual step. Like, for you personally, if this is what you're going through, is the first thing you do is you just do nothing, you cut them off, you put them out of your life, you move on with yours, and you work on what makes you a happy, well-grounded person, and you stay there, because that's good, right? It's like you do things that are positive for your immediate reality, and you do those things, and you stay in that feedback loop. Because if you partake in the negativity feedback loop of someone who's suffering and spreading negativity to feel better about themselves, you are only going to get brought down by it. So you cut them off. And, better yet would be to, like, touch them, like, connect with them and break through their their need for validation by putting you down, and understand why it is that they do that. And that's some like extremely difficult stuff. I can't even like imagine how you would have this conversation with somebody. So, if that doesn't work, okay, no problem, you can show them outside of, right? Like, talk is cheap, right? And actions speak louder than words. And I'm not one for throwing, but what are those? This is like cop-outs, right? Those cop-out sayings. But it's true. Like, you don't want to engage in like cheap talk and throwing shit. Like, right? Someone's talking shit. You don't want to go get into a shit throwing contest. You want to just stay clean. So you stay clean and you do good work and you find your own happiness. And then, the instigator who's suffering can only see you for what you're doing. And if they're miserable for it, then there's nothing you can do. I mean, you're doing what works for you, and like they're responsible for their own suffering. Like, you're not responsible for their suffering. And I think like the last point I had was like, it's really important that you can bring yourself to forgive them so that you don't hold any negativity at all. If you are taking it personally to some degree and you are holding resentment for it and it sits with you, it's going to be a chip on your shoulder. That's gonna bog you down. It's gonna hurt eventually. It's gonna leave like a mark on your soul. Like, it's going to be an unresolved piece of emotional damage, right, to your relationship, but also to yourself. Like, it might generate like insecurity, which is, just nobody needs extra insecurities in their own life, right? Like, we need to experience things. Oh, I want to make a video about that. But my point is like, if you can empathize and understand them enough to say, aha, I see that you were hurting and I'm sorry that you hurt. I wish that you could feel better, and I can show you how I feel better for myself, and I can understand why you are putting me down. You are hurting, and that's awful, right? Like, that sucks. Like, and I forgive you. You can say, you forgive them, and then you can take the chip off your shoulder, and then you don't have to carry any negativity with you at all. You can just move on and continue being the positive person that like uplifts people in their life, and through that example, right? The best case scenario is that this instigator who is seeing you being the positive impact is no longer tempted, right? They don't have the tools to self-regulate and find their own positivity. But by creating an example of doing it for yourself in your own life, they can look at you and see it and learn from your example. And then the world will be a better place because you aren't feeling negativity anymore, and you are creating an opportunity for somebody to learn better for themselves. If you can't do it directly, this is definitely the best way to go about it. Thanks. Have a good night.